It was raining the day they buried me, not a cinematic drizzle or poetic mist. It poured in thick, ugly sheets that blurred the headstones and smeared mascara down the cheeks of women who had never liked me much to begin with. I watched from the edge of the cemetery, hood pulled low, hair tucked into a brunette wig, soaked to the bone but unable to move. There was something vulgar about watching your own funeral, a kind of voyeurism. But I couldn't look away. There he was, Dominic. Grief clung to him like a second skin. His black suit fit like armor, but his hands were trembling as he gripped the umbrella. His jaw was clenched so tightly I thought it might snap, and for a moment, a twisted part of me wondered if he was pretending, if he rehearsed that expression in the mirror. Because Dominic had been lying to me for months, maybe years, and now, standing over the casket they all thought contained my body, he was putting on one last show. I wanted to scream, but instead I stood in the mud, silent, while the priest said a name I no longer felt connected to. Elena Amara Wells. Dead at 32. Wife, daughter, philanthropist, loving, loyal, naive. There was no body in that coffin, just a weighted dress, a bouquet of white lilies, and the lie I let the world believe, that I drowned in a boating accident off the coast of Marbella. A tragic, sudden accident during what was supposed to be a romantic getaway with my husband. A weekend I canceled last minute after finding the first piece of evidence. 2 months earlier. It was late, the kind of late that blurred into early. I had come back from a charity gala earlier than expected, heels in hand, champagne headache throbbing faintly behind my eyes. The house was dark, too quiet, and Dominic wasn't in bed. I remember moving through the hallways, listening, not just with my ears, but with that part of a woman that knows before she's told. I heard him in his study, whispering. The door was open just a crack, and I could see his silhouette outlined against the dim glow of his desk lamp. He was on the phone. "I'm handling it," he said. "She doesn't know anything. Yet." Pause. "No. She won't make it to the trip, trust me." The phone clicked off. Silence. I don't remember breathing. I remember the feeling of my chest compressing, as if I'd forgotten how. The next morning, I acted normal. I laughed. I kissed his cheek. I told him the trip was back on, after all. Let's go to Marbella. Let's fix what's broken. He smiled, said he was glad, said he'd make the arrangements, but I never got on the boat. Back to the present. At the cemetery, Dominic stood still even as the others began to walk away. His mother pulled at his arm gently, but he didn't move. That was when I noticed her. A woman, standing a few feet behind him, pretty in that generic, unthreatening way. Blonde, slim, lipstick too bold for a funeral. She watched him too closely, touched his back too familiarly. My lawyer had said her name was Penelope, that she'd been seen entering our home, that she'd been around before my death. Dominic hadn't wasted time mourning. I clenched my fists in my coat pockets, nails biting skin. It wasn't just betrayal. It was humiliation. It was knowing the man I built my world around and even waited for my body to be cold before filling my side of the bed. Except, there was something off. Dominic wasn't touching her. He didn't even look at her. He kept his eyes fixed on the grave like he could fall into it. Like he wanted to. It made no sense. Nothing did anymore. I left the cemetery before they did. There was no place for me there. Not as a widow, and certainly not as a ghost. My lawyer, Gerald, met me in the back of the car. He didn't ask how I felt. He'd known me long enough to know I wouldn't answer. He simply passed me the manila folder. Inside, security footage, transcripts, photos. Penelope entering my home late at night. Deliveries of wine. Candles. Takeout. A new toothbrush in my bathroom. There was even a blurred image of her wearing my robe. Dominic hadn't just betrayed me. He'd replaced me. "I want to go back," I said. Gerald looked at me, confused. "You? Can't. I want to go back into that house, but not as myself." His brow furrowed. "I'll be someone else," I continued. "A maid. Quiet. Unremarkable. I want to see him. I want to see them. I want to see the life they built without me." "You want revenge?" "No," I whispered. "I want the truth." It took weeks. A new identity. A forged resume. A woman with red hair, tired eyes, and a faint Eastern European accent. My name was Clara now. And this morning, Dominic Wells was hiring new domestic staff for his now lonely mansion, the same mansion I used to call home. Later that day, I stood outside the gates, suitcase in hand, as the security guard opened them for me. I'd never seen this house from the outside before, not as a stranger. Everything looked colder, bigger, like a painting I no longer recognized. A butler, unfamiliar, let me in, said the master would be with me shortly. Master. The word turned my stomach. I waited in the foyer. Footsteps echoed down the marble hall, and then him. Dominic appeared in a crisp white shirt and dark slacks, sleeves rolled up like he hadn't slept. His face was thinner, beard darker, eyes sharper, but it was him, the man who once swore to protect me, love me, grow old with me. And now he was interviewing me. A stranger, a maid, and he didn't recognize me. Not yet. Chapter 2. A stranger in my own life. The house was too quiet, not peaceful, like it used to be when I would wander barefoot through the corridors, humming old jazz and sipping wine, but hollow, like something had died here. Maybe it had. Maybe it was me. Dominic stood across from me in the grand entrance, the same place he once kissed my fingers the day we moved in and said, "Let's make a life here." Now, his gaze slid over my new face, my dyed hair, my deliberately lowered eyes. I was Clara, the Levin maid with no family, a faint accent I crafted to sound foreign but vague. I had practiced that accent for weeks in front of a cracked mirror. Now it was all that stood between recognition and ruin. Dominic's expression didn't flicker. "Clara," he repeated, voice low. A tired man's voice. "Yes, sir," I said, keeping my tone clipped. He studied me, not as a man studies a woman, but as someone who doesn't quite trust his own instincts. "Gerald says you come well recommended." "I do, sir." He didn't respond, just nodded once, then turned and walked deeper into the house. I followed at a safe distance, past familiar furniture I could name blindfolded, down halls I once painted myself. Now every inch of it felt wrong. "Your room is down the service hallway," he said over his shoulder. "You'll be assisting with the daily upkeep. Minimal cooking, light cleaning. Privacy is important in this house." Privacy. The word struck me. It had been his favorite excuse toward the end, when he locked the study, when he changed his passwords, when he stopped letting me in. "Yes, sir," I said again. He paused at the base of the stairs. "Don't go into the east wing unless instructed. Understood?" That was my wing. Our bedroom. My art studio. My closet full of memories that didn't make it into the coffin. "Understood?" He turned away. But in the briefest moment before he did, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Grief. It was like catching a ghost in a mirror. There, then gone. Later that night, my new room was plain. A narrow cot, a chipped dresser, a lamp that buzzed when turned on. It was the opposite of the lush bedroom I used to share with him, where silk sheets tangled around our ankles, and I'd wake to him tracing my shoulder blades with his fingertips. Now I laid on a mattress that sagged in the middle, fully clothed, ears open. I heard footsteps pacing upstairs. A voice. Hushed, feminine. "Penelope?" I slipped out of bed, silent as breath, and crept into the hall. The air smelled like pine cleaner and something sweeter. Lavender, maybe. I moved toward the back staircase, the one staff used, narrow and tucked behind the pantry. I hadn't used it in years. Funny how the body remembers things before the mind catches up. Voices floated down. "I don't think she should be here," Penelope was saying. What if they're watching again?" A pause. "I've already vetted her," Dominic replied, clipped. "She's harmless." Harmless? The word sat in my throat like bile. She has the same hair color. That stopped me. Dominic didn't speak. "Don't tell me you didn't notice," Penelope whispered. "You think it's a coincidence that she looks like her?" I pressed against the wall. He finally answered, "It's not her." Another silence, and then even softer. "She's gone." The way he said it, "she's gone," sounded like a wound still bleeding. Not relief, not guilt, just pain. I slipped back to my room, heart pounding. Penelope, she wasn't just around. She knew something. She was involved in something. And Dominic, he still thought of me. Still saw me in other women. That should have made me feel powerful. Instead, it made me ache. The next day. I started cleaning, not because I had to, the house already had staff, but because it gave me access, movement, excuses to be in the right rooms at the right times. I dusted Dominic's study with slow precision, scanning bookshelves and drawers for clues. In the bottom drawer of his desk, beneath a false bottom, I found a small leather notebook. Unmarked, tightly bound. Inside, notes, scrawled meetings, names, Most of them I didn't recognize. Some I did. One in particular made my hands go cold. Wells, Amara, Elias. My father's name, crossed out, underlined twice. What the hell did Dominic have to do with my father? I barely had time to slide it back when footsteps approached. I ducked out just as Dominic entered, phone to his ear. "No," he said into the receiver. "She hasn't surfaced. Yes, I'm sure. She's dead." A pause. "If she wasn't, I'd know. I'd feel it." He turned, saw me in the hallway. My heart stalled. Our eyes locked. Something flickered there again. Confusion? Déjà vu? I dipped my head. "Sorry, sir. I was just cleaning the sconces." He hesitated, then nodded once. "Stay out of this room when I'm not in it, Clara. Understood?" "Yes, sir." Later that week. I saw Penelope again. She was in the kitchen, laughing with the chef, barefoot, holding a wine glass like she owned the place. I stayed quiet, watching from behind the pantry door. She moved like she belonged there. Touched things I used to touch. Smiled in the chair I once cried in. I should have hated her. But something didn't add up. She was too comfortable. Not seductive, not flirty, familiar. Like a sister-in-law or an old family friend. She asked about wine pairings, talked about shipping delays on security cameras. This wasn't an affair. This was something else. That night, I slipped into the East Wing. The bedroom hadn't changed. My perfume still sat on the vanity. My robe, the silk one with the pale blue trim, was draped neatly on the bed. Not worn, not tossed. Preserved, a shrine. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the portrait on the wall. A painting of me, commissioned by Dominic for our 5th anniversary. I touched the frame, and I cried for the first time since I'd faked my own death. Because for all the betrayal, all the confusion, all the unanswered questions, I could still feel him in this room. And worse, I still loved him. Chapter 3. Her things are still here. In the first week of pretending to be someone else, I discovered the most painful truth of all. He hadn't replaced me. Not really. He just couldn't let me go. The East Wing, my wing, was like a preserved museum exhibit. Everything untouched. Everything still the same. The scent of my jasmine perfume hung in the air like it refused to move on either. My robe, my sketch pads, even my hairbrush still held strands of my hair. That night, while the rest of the staff had gone to bed and the house had gone still, I crept back into the master bedroom. I expected change. Maybe new sheets. A different lamp. A new woman's necklace on the nightstand. Instead, I found silence. Stillness. And a photo frame by the bed. It was a picture of us, from Santorini. The trip we took 2 summers ago, when I thought we'd finally found each other again after a long winter of fights and silence. I had my arms thrown around him, laughing. He was smiling. Not the stiff, polite one he wore in public, but the rare kind. The kind reserved for me. The frame had fingerprints smudged on the glass, like someone touched it often. Like it was used. My chest ached. He hadn't moved on. He hadn't even tried. So why Penelope? Why the secrecy? Why the lies and coded calls? I moved through the closet next, opening drawers slowly. I wasn't sure what I was looking for. A clue. A confession. A reason. In the back corner of the walk-in, behind boxes of my shoes and winter coats, I found a floorboard slightly raised. I pried it up with trembling fingers. Inside, a journal. Leather-bound, nearly full, with a blue ribbon pressed between the pages. Not mine. Not Dominic's handwriting either. It was careful. Tidy, too meticulous to be casual. I flipped it open. He said, "We have to keep it quiet until after the trip. She can't find out. If she does, it's over." Threat came again. Same initials, same symbol, the ash mark. It's her they want, not him. But hurting her will destroy him. That's the leverage. July canceled the trip. I don't know if she suspects anything. He's trying to protect her, but he's unraveling. He won't tell her. Says it'll break her. The ribbon marked a specific page. August 9th, the night before the boat. I told him to come clean, to tell her everything. He refused. Said if she knew what her family was involved in, she'd never trust anyone again. Not even him. I said secrets would ruin her more than the truth. He said, at least she'll be alive. I sat on the cold floor for what felt like hours. Every breath felt like betrayal. I had made up my mind so quickly. He cheated. He moved on. He never loved me. I had faked my death, disappeared, reinvented myself, all to catch a man I thought destroyed me. But what if I destroyed us? What if his silence was protection, not guilt? And what the hell did it mean? Her family. What had my family done? Later that night, I couldn't. Around midnight, I heard footsteps upstairs. Slow, uneven. I followed, padding barefoot through the carpeted hallway until I reached the library, the room I avoided most. It used to be ours. On quiet Sundays, we'd read on opposite ends of the velvet couch, exchanging passages, stealing kisses between pages. I peeked through the crack in the door. Dominic sat alone in the dark, hunched over a glass of whiskey. His shoulders were tense, his head down. He held the same photograph I saw earlier, the one of us. His thumb brushed over my face. And then, slowly, he began to cry. Not loud, not dramatic, just broken. His chest rose and fell in silence, and I watched as the strongest man I'd ever known, the one I believed capable of unspeakable betrayal, fell apart in a way I'd never seen. And I realized something that hollowed me out. He wasn't mourning my death. He was mourning the last moment we had together, a lie we both lived through. The next morning. I couldn't look him in the eye at breakfast, not as he sat at the head of the long, gleaming table, flipping through the paper with tired hands, sipping black coffee from a chipped mug I once bought him at a flea market. Penelope walked in halfway through, tying her hair back, dressed in leggings and a t-shirt. No robe, no signs of intimacy. She sat across from him, not beside. They barely spoke. The tension wasn't romantic. It was strategic, like two people keeping watch for the same invisible threat. Dominic finally said, "Did you check the cameras?" "They're clear," she said. But the letter came again. My ears burned. Letter? He swore. Where? Front gate, taped to the stone column. Same handwriting, same threat. He threw the paper down. "They're getting closer." She hesitated, then glanced toward me. "Clara, could you give us a moment?" I nodded and left. But I lingered just outside the door. "It's her father," Penelope said in a low voice. "I know you don't want to believe it, but this all points back to him." Dominic's voice cracked. She loved him. She didn't know him. Silence. I backed away slowly, heart racing, blood roaring in my ears. My father? My father was cold, controlling, obsessive. But a criminal? Suddenly the puzzle wasn't just about Dominic. It was about my entire life and what had been hidden from me all along. That evening, I sat alone in my tiny maid's room, holding the journal in my lap, staring at the same page again and again. At least she'll be alive. Dominic had lied. Yes, but not for the reason I thought. He didn't cheat. He didn't move on. He protected me from something so dark. He believed I was better off hating him than knowing the truth. And I left him to rot in that silence. I curled into the cot and cried for the woman I was, the man I lost, and the years we'd never get back. And for the first time since I came back, I wasn't sure if I'd done the right thing. Chapter 4, His Secret War. The journal stayed hidden beneath my mattress, pressed flat beneath a blanket I never used. Every night, I'd open it under the dim glow of the bedside lamp, reading the same pages over and over, as if some new truth might appear if I stared long enough. But the truth had already spoken, in Dominic's hand, in his silence, in his pain, and it screamed that everything I believed about him was a lie. It was late afternoon when I found myself back in the library, cleaning, pretending, watching. Dominic wasn't home. Penelope was. She stood by the window, phone pressed to her ear, voice clipped and precise. Nothing like the woman I'd assumed was here for romance. "She still hasn't surfaced," she said. "No, there's been no movement on her accounts. Gerald confirms everything's frozen. I don't think she's coming back." She turned slightly, revealing a tight expression that looked more like concern than relief. And Dominic? He's not himself. He's barely sleeping. If this goes on much longer, he'll self-destruct. Too late, I thought bitterly. That evening, Dominic returned after dark, clothes damp with rain. His shirt clung to him, hair matted, face unreadable. He didn't speak as he passed through the entryway. I stood frozen in the hallway with a duster in my hand, watching him like a shadow. He walked straight past me, but not before his eyes briefly flicked to my face. I looked away, but that moment, that half second of awareness, left me trembling. It was nearly midnight when I heard voices again. This time, outside, near the rose garden. I slipped from my room and crept to the rear hallway. From the window, I saw them, Dominic and Penelope, standing in the rain beneath the stone archway where we once held summer parties, where he once kissed my shoulder and told me I was the only peace he'd ever known. Their conversation was sharp, emotional, Penelope's arms were crossed tightly. She loved you. She trusted me, Dominic snapped. And I destroyed that. No, you tried to protect her. That's different. He shook his head. I let her believe I was cheating. I let her walk away thinking I never loved her. You didn't have a choice. There's always a choice, he said, voice cracking. I chose wrong. Then came the words I'll never forget. The ones that shattered me more than the betrayal ever could. If I could trade places with her, I would. I loved her too much to keep her in my world. I sank to the floor, the cold tiles biting my knees, my hand pressed against my mouth to hold back the sound. There it was. Not guilt, not secrecy. Love. Agonizing, unconditional, sacrificial love. The next day. The walls of the house felt smaller, closer, like they could hear my thoughts. I moved through the halls as Clara, still playing the quiet maid, but my mind burned with questions and regret. I wanted to run to him. Tell him it was me, that I never should have left, that I should have asked instead of assuming. But how could I? He believed I was dead. He had mourned me, buried me, carried the weight of guilt and silence like a punishment, and I'd let him. Could I really show up now, as if none of that mattered? Would he forgive me for the way I disappeared? For the cruel game I'd made of watching him suffer? Or worse, what if I revealed myself and he didn't want me back? What if the version of me he loved was gone, and all that was left was this bitter ghost in a maid's uniform? That evening, I lingered in the drawing room, pretending to dust. Dominic sat in a chair near the fire, a file open in his lap. He didn't notice me right away. But then he said without looking up, "You don't talk much, Clara." My heart stopped. I kept my voice level. I was told discretion was valued in this house, sir. He looked up. His gaze pinned me. There it was again, that flicker, that tiny pause. "You remind me of someone," he said softly. "Someone I lost." I didn't answer. He closed the file slowly. She was the strongest person I knew, but she never let anyone help her. Not really. I stared at him, barely breathing. She carried everything alone, even the pain. His voice grew hoarse. And when it became too much, she left. She didn't trust that I could carry it with her. He looked away. Maybe she was right. The silence crackled like ice. "I'm sorry for your loss, sir," I whispered. He flinched just slightly, like the word loss had bruised something still healing. Then he nodded, stood, and left the room without another word. I sat on the couch after he was gone, fingers clenched so tight my nails left crescents in my palms. The Dominic I had loved, the man I thought I had lost, was still in there, wounded, haunted, but real. He had built a wall of grief around himself, and I had built my own, made of suspicion and rage. Now we stood on either side, staring at the ruins in between, and I didn't know if love could still survive it. Chapter 5, The Woman Behind the Lie. By the time everything unraveled, I had nearly convinced myself I was in control, that I could keep pretending, that I could stay in Dominic's house, near him, around him, without my heart showing its scars. But lies rot from the inside, and mine had finally started to decay. The first crack came one morning when Penelope cornered me in the upstairs linen closet. She stepped into the narrow space and shut the door behind her. "I know who you are." My blood turned to ice. She gave me a long, measured look. I didn't want to believe it. "But the way you move through this house, the way you watch him. And then there's your voice. You're good, but not that good." I gripped the shelf behind me. "You're mistaken." "No, Elena," she said calmly. "I'm not." Silence fell like a guillotine. "Does he know?" I asked. Penelope shook her head. "Not yet, but he will. He's close. He senses something." She stepped back. "You should tell him, before he figures it out the hard way." I didn't move. She opened the door, paused, then looked over her shoulder. "And for what it's worth, I'm not the other woman." I blinked. "I was hired by him after the threat started. I'm a private investigator, surveillance, background checks, silent security. He brought me in to help protect you." My mouth parted slightly. "I posed as something else because it worked. No one suspects a woman having an affair. But this house, it's been under siege. Quietly, carefully, ever since you got close to something you weren't supposed to. That evening, everything shattered. I was in the hallway just outside the study when it happened. Dominic walked past me, then stopped, froze. He inhaled once, deeply, turned. His gaze locked on mine, and his entire body went still. His voice came low, Your perfume. My blood stopped moving. He took a step closer. His hand trembled. Elena? My throat closed. He stepped forward again, reached up slowly and touched my face, just barely. His fingers skimmed my cheek like he was touching memory. Elena, he whispered again. A breath, a prayer, a man seeing a ghost in the flesh. I couldn't lie. Not now. Not when I saw the storm behind his eyes break into something deeper. Yes, I whispered. It's me. He staggered back like I'd struck him, then silence, explosive, violent silence. His face contorted, confusion, anger, disbelief, grief, all colliding in the space between us. You're alive. It wasn't a question. I had to know the truth. He laughed bitterly, a sound so sharp it cut me. So you faked your death? Disappeared? Made me bury a coffin full of nothing? You were lying to me, I shot back, voice shaking. You were keeping secrets. You shut me out. I was trying to protect you. By breaking me? His voice rose. You think I didn't break? I thought you were dead. I blamed myself every goddamn day. I flinched. He paced, running both hands through his hair, jaw clenched so tightly the veins in his neck bulged. You watched me, he hissed. Lived in this house, lied to my face. And you let me think you betrayed me, I snapped. You let me believe there was someone else. I let you believe what you wanted to believe, because the truth would have destroyed you. Maybe I deserved to know. His eyes burned. And maybe you didn't trust me enough to ask. The silence between us turned raw, bloody. We stood there, two people who had broken each other for love. Two people who still burned for one another, even through the wreckage. Finally, he stepped forward. Voice lower. Ragged. I never stopped loving you. Tears gathered in my eyes. I don't think I ever stopped hating myself. He touched my face again, gently this time, reverently, and then the window shattered. A crack, a pop, then a rush of glass and wind as a bullet ripped through the room. Dominic shoved me to the ground instantly, shielding my body with his. More shots. Chaos. Screams from downstairs. Penelope burst in seconds later, gun drawn. We've been compromised. They found out. Dominic pulled me to my feet. Basement. Now. We ran. In the panic room. The door sealed shut with a mechanical hiss, muffling the gunfire outside. I stood with my back against the cool wall, chest heaving. Dominic paced, adrenaline still radiating off him. His knuckles were scraped from where he'd pushed me out of harm's way. Who are they? I asked. Voice hoarse. He looked at me, and then finally he said the name. Elias Amara. My legs buckled slightly. That's not possible. He's the one behind the threats, behind the letters. He's been funneling funds through shell companies, and they cut a deal to keep it buried. And Elias thought he could erase all traces of the past. You think he tried to have me killed? I know it, Dominic said. You were a loose end. My vision blurred, and you never told me. I wanted to. I tried, but there was too much risk, and then you vanished. I vanished because I thought you were the enemy, and I let you believe it. We stared at each other, hearts torn open, the truth laid bare. I'm sorry, I whispered. He crossed the space between us, took my face in his hands, and pressed his forehead to mine. We both are, he breathed. But I won't lose you again. Outside the walls of the panic room, the world raged. But in that moment, we stood still. Bruised, broken, but together. 6 weeks later, the house was no longer quiet. Not in the way it had been when grief lived in the walls. Now the silence was soft. Chosen, healing. I sat on the back steps of the garden, watching the breeze ripple through the lavender. I wore no disguise. No wig, no lies tucked beneath my skin. Just Elena. Just me. Behind me, the door creaked open. Dominic stepped out, barefoot, sleeves rolled up, a mug in each hand. Still can't sleep. I took the one he offered and nodded. Not really. He sat beside me. Our shoulders brushed. They dropped the last of the charges against you, I said, eyes on the horizon. Said you were acting under duress. That you kept silent to protect me. He gave a faint, humorless laugh. Was that ever in question? I looked at him. It was, for a long time. And then, softer. By me. He didn't answer right away, just sipped his coffee. Then finally, I deserved that. No, I said. You didn't. I was hurt, but I was also afraid, and pride makes a poor defense mechanism. He looked at me fully then, brow furrowed. Elena, I need to say this, I interrupted gently. I've spent most of my life waiting for people to betray me. My mother, my father, even you. And when I thought you had, it made sense. That's the worst part. It felt expected. I swallowed. But You didn't betray me. You broke trying to protect me. And I broke trying to expose you. We were both bleeding and neither of us knew how to ask the other to stop. Dominic's jaw worked like the words scraped something open in him. I would have died for you. I know, I whispered. I think you almost did. We sat in silence again. He shifted slightly, hand brushing against mine. I've been thinking, he said. About us, yeah? I don't want to rebuild what we had. That version of us, it was beautiful, but it died a long time ago. I looked at him, heart thudding. I want to begin again, he said. No expectations, no old vows, just two people, choosing each other, honestly, even if it's messy, even if it's slow. My chest ached in that warm, breathless way that happens when grief finally gives way to hope. I nodded. Okay, I said. Let's begin again. He reached out, brushing a curl from my cheek. His touch was gentle, reverent, like it had been the very first time. And in that garden where secrets had once bloomed like rot, something new began to grow. Not perfection, but something real. Thanks for reading. If you loved this story filled with secrets, love, and unexpected twists, don't forget to subscribe for more gripping tales that will keep you hooked until the very last page. Hit that subscribe button and join us for the next unforgettable journey.